Now let's talk about the Transformers agenda. AKA, they're putting chemicals in the Energon and trying to turn our bots gay.
No one was doing horror comics when we came out with R3. Very quickly, I think there were 130. Of course, they didn't have the art and they didn't have the stories. But in all honesty, I can't say they were gorier than we were because we figured we could out-gore anybody, and we did.
Guy murders his wife and eats her, so he can get rid of the evidence. What can we do with it? So, we come up with some crazy gimmick with a snap ending. We always love to have shock endings and surprise things, much like the kind of thing that Twilight Zone had afterwards, and Alfred Hitchcock. We did get grosser and grosser, there's no question about it. But we were doing tongue-in-cheek horror stories. And they were starting to say things like, hey, this is ruining our kids, and they're going to become ghouls, vampires, and murderers, which is a lot of nonsense.
These comic book covers that you are seeing here are a sample of what the children of the United States are reading today. 20 million copies of these comic books are pouring off the presses every single month. They're getting into the hands of children, and their contents match the cover.
I'll eat your ass. I will. And that's why I want the globe to know. I will eat your ass first. I will eat your ass. Gah! Gah!
I don't give a tuppeny fuck about your moral conundrum, you meat-headed shitsack.
For the future.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
What did you do?
I didn't do fucking shit.
You want a raw tough guy? Then take it raw!
Everywhere I go, I see his face.
You already a whore. Why not make some money at it?
Here at AF, we work hard to make sure we've got the facts to back up every accusation of chuddery, that we're entertaining every time we spotlight some fascistic fuck, film fandom flimflamer, culture vulture, Star Wars swindler, or comics con man. And by we, I mean me. And while I'm certainly not doing it for money, I do need to buy a new PC soon for continued editing and streaming. That's why I want to express my deep gratitude for my support on Patreon from dopest members like William, Michael, and Smirking Gun. That's not to say that the members at the chillest and basedest tiers are any less appreciated. But even if you can't swing it, you can follow me for free on Patreon and still get some exclusive content and opportunities to chat directly with me. YouTube makes us give every ounce of ourselves. Sometimes it feels like we're being milked dry. Support at any level is hits.
You all know exactly who I am.
No.
Say my name.
The other one, No Organized Chaos.
Everywhere I go, I see his face.
I vaguely know what actual fandom is.
Actual fandom?
Okay, you the big bad booty daddy.
Goddamn right.
Here's the thing. Okay.
Oh, somebody, please! They got the children!
The only way that you can really stop this kind of thing is to arouse public opinion. It's very upsetting. It has a bad moral effect.
Forced adversity.
Ask yourself, what's more terrifying, fear or the frightened?
The facts of history and the aggressive impulses of an evil empire.
Bad, B-A-D-D, bothered about Dungeons and Dragons.
Up yours, woke moralists.
Socialism has spread the shadow of human regimentation over most of the nations of the earth.
And they're pushing identity politics with this. They 100% are.
How do you think homosexuals reveal themselves?
And the shadow is encroaching upon our own liberty.
I think there ought to be a law against them. Tonight I'm going to show you why.
Is he okay? Somebody better check on him. Yeah, we X-Fapping today, guys. We are X-Fapping. Welcome to Force Diversity Podcast. Nobody's favorite stream on this channel. Apparently, because we get too fucking real. So the numbers aren't as high as maybe some of the Chud specific stuff. But look, we're doing a Chud today. We're fapping a Chud that like is, he's kind of like he's really not been fapped enough. He's it's kind of upsetting that more people aren't aware of just how insidious this fucking guy is. And of course, we're talking about Dr. Stasis of Orchis. But also, we are talking about Chris Rufo. And, look, who better to talk about X-Men than an X-Man? So, Morgan.
Hey, what's going on?
What up?
So I noticed something about the intro.
Uh-huh.
And somehow I haven't thought, this thought hasn't occurred to me in a year of doing this with you. When the guy is talking about socialism, and the shadow is spreading over the globe. Whose shadow is it that's actually spreading over the globe? In that
it's
his hand, right?
Yes.
It's his. Oh, whose shadow is spreading? Oh, it's fucking yours, you asswipe.
I think I remember when I was first editing that, noticing it and just thinking, oh, that's kind of funny. And then like it just escaped me until now. Like, but as soon as you started saying it, I was like, oh yeah.
And you know what? I noticing that today, it's a good day to notice it, talking about this motherfucker, Dr. Stasis. And
why is he specifically like somebody that is problematic in that regard, or what's the deal?
I feel like when he's worried about spreading people's shadows, he's a big doo-doo head liar.
Yeah, I think so.
And doing that shifting blame, like his whatever number our Earth is counterpart, one Christopher motherfucking Rufo.
Well, look, we can't rag on the guy too hard because he was kind enough to be in the New York Times today.
He did make the New York Times today. Let me do
So I guess he just wanted to help us out, maybe. We'll
yeah,
see
he's a
if
big fan of the
bear that
show.
out.
big fan of the pod. Here, we'll pop this bad boy up. Let me just do the screen share.
So the jingle was actually done by a guy named he goes by Intellectual Darkwave, and I actually should promote him more often because he makes some good music. I imagine he's still making music. Let me check. I haven't talked to him in a while, but he did that for me, and then I've also got my actual fandom music that is specifically Blade Runner inspired. I asked for something Blade Runner inspired. He did that. I haven't used that much lately. But then also I have another song that he did at a request from me. It's the Bad Boys cover that I used in my Punisher Police Problem videos.
There you go.
Let me look him up real quick, and then we can, check it out, and then move on to the show because we fapping a big one. It's a big one.
It's a big one.
This guy, like, if you ask most people, hey, okay, most people who aren't fucking insane cult conservatives, what's ruining the country right now? A lot of people probably be like Trump and Trump's cult, and a lot of other people, reasonably so, rightfully so, would say, oh, the Senate, things like that. It's like true,
Supreme Court,
all that. Oh yeah, absolutely, all those are true. But this guy, I don't know that the long-term damage that he's doing, the foundation that he has been laying for all of these other people to do the damage they're doing, I think is absolutely necessary to the entire propaganda campaign.
Right.
And that's why we're going to not just look at Dr. Stasis a little bit. We're going to look at Orchis and how, these things are. Look, there's a reason that Orchis is Orchis in the comics right now. And we're going to look at that. Let's see. Oh my God, he just had a song pop up right as I went to his channel. So this is Intellectual Darkwave, and I will drop his link in the chat.
Nice.
He's got songs about, he's got 12 rules.
Oh my God.
There's Power in a Union, Joe Chillwave, I don't know what some of these are. I haven't listened to them yet. But he did a Solidarity Forever. I actually did some vocalization on that.
Nice, that's rad.
This is Rev Team, which was the original version of what is the Initiative now, actually. He was one of the first ones on board with the Rev Team, which is not my favorite name, but it was a vote. It was a democracy, and that's what we came away with. So, and then it all went to crap because, hey, surprise, the online left just loves to be dramatic and get into bullshit and not really doing much organizing.
We're going to talk about that at the end of the show and make some people upset-a-row.
Oh, so you're going to make folks mad. Okay.
I'm going to make folks mad, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he's got some. Oh, this one was really good. Cigars, the Rush Limbaugh, Dennis Prager song.
You know what? I would like to help. You know what? I hope one day soon, very soon, I hope that Dennis Prager and Rush Limbaugh can be reunited.
Yeah, they were buddies, I think.
And I would like them to join together in committing the rest of their existence to being gender neutral bathrooms.
Yeah. All right, so I've got Intellectual Darkwave's channel link in the chat. You should go sub to him. I'll pull a song and we can end after Morgan pisses everybody off. I'll pull a nice chill synthwave song that's also funny, and we'll listen to that on the way out the door later. But hey guys, we got shit to get to. We gotta do some bub talk.
We gotta talk some bub. It is the year of the bub.
It is the year of bub, and yeah, I haven't forgotten. I know that if you follow my Patreon and you watch my first Patreon update, I did not get a video out that week as I planned to do. because ice storm, like several days of snow hit here, and like, you know, there was like a couple of days when I just left my PC off because I was like, power was flickering on and off and shit. And just generally kind of got hit with some, not like super hardcore, but a little bit of creeping depression symptoms, which is
Depression is no fun and no good.
Not a good feeling, considering I haven't really had it since I had a severe depression in 2020, and then I got transcranial magnetic stimulation, which knocked that shit right the fuck out, and I haven't had any symptoms since then. So I was really hoping that I was just free of it forever, because that is something that happens with a certain percentage of people that get that treatment.
Right.
But seems to not be the case. However, I haven't like continued having those, say, the same degree of symptoms. So I think maybe there's some still, effect that is preventing it from getting any worse. And that's
helpful.
goodness.
Yeah. Because depression fucking sucks.
Indeed. Especially, man, that 2020 one was a bitch.
Oh yeah. 2020 was rough for a lot of people. And like, you know what? You all made it through it. We all here survived 2020. So toast to y'all.
Indeed.
That was a hard one.
So let me just get my bearings here and find my bub stuff, because do you guys, Wolverine hates fascists. I don't know if you know that.
He not a fan. No, not a big fascist fan. Yeah, not. He might be what I would consider anti-fascist, very much like against that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but that sounds a lot like Antifa, and they're actually fascists. So,
is that what's the fa that Antifa is anti?
I'm trying to, let me see. I don't know. I thought it was. This is a confusing subject for me, so I'm just going to choose to end the conversation.
All right.
I'm gonna call you a cuck, and then I'm gonna leave.
Perfect. All right, fantastic.
No, so I know I'd said I was going to do chronological, but I feel like that will get tedious. So I'm basically just whatever I read or pops into mind about Wolverine each week that I'm like, okay, that's a thing that's stuck in my mind. I want to talk about that.
That's
what I'm
facts.
gonna do. It's butt facts. And hopefully each time I can have something as awesome as this sequence from comics that I've got here to look at.
Ooh. So
this is from Greg Rucka's run on Wolverine. This is from like 2009, I believe, something like that.
Sure.
And this is this is some real dirt bag Logan era shit. You know what I mean? Like, this is after he got his memories back, but before he'd really started on the journey of like truly like just figuring out how to make sense of all that shit and live a life that isn't completely just violence left and right all the time. I mean, he eventually ends up back there, but nonetheless, anyway, point being, he's on the road right now, which is often what Wolverine's solo comics were.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Just kind of like, how did he have time to be on the road so much? I don't know. He was, at a certain point, he was a headmaster of a school, and he was also an Avenger, and who knows, but don't ask questions. So
Comics
here
time.
he is. This is at the end of a little arc where he had found a cult in this small town that had been like, really exploiting the people of the town. And, he did what he does best eventually and just kind of murdered them all.
Like you do.
And so he's talking to Nightcrawler, and Nightcrawler's like, must be hard to punish yourself when your healing factor fights you every inch of the way. He says, you have no idea. And yet here you are doing your best impression of a fish. And Nightcrawler says, we've both seen innocence suffer before, my friend. We've both seen the inhumanity of man to his fellow man. Why is Lucy Braddock so different that you drive, Lucy Braddock, rather, so different that you drive across the country for 3 days without rest to meet me here and to engage in this vain attempt to torture your liver?
Pours another beer.
And so Lucy Braddock is the girl that was, she was his neighbor in this like temporary spot he was sleeping at. And she was scared of him. She hated him. She thought she would walk by him in the hallway and think like, this guy is fucking scary and gross.
Which, to be fair.
Yeah, true. And then she was murdered by this cult. And, Logan doesn't matter that she didn't like him too much.
Nope.
He's not a fan. So 17's too young to die. 70 would some would say is too young. We have both seen too much death, lost too many we have cared for. But as trite as it is to say, Logan, death is part of life, even unnatural death, even perhaps murder. Not murder. He says, you think? I do not advocate it, of course, but I would point out that every Judeo-Christian religion has murder in the basic text. Cain slew Abel, and thus the world knew murder. One could argue that murder is as natural as the dying of old age. You don't really believe that. I'm no longer sure what I believe, my friend. So we've got the beginnings of
yeah.
Well, not really the beginnings. He's kind of wavered here and there with his faith over the years.
He's always questioned his faith, which, given the shit that happens to the poor blue elf.
Yeah. Considering the fact that he is a blue elf,
Right. It doesn't help things.
Actions always speak louder than words. You know this better than anyone. Your actions have always marked you to me as a good man, as an honorable man. Uh-oh. He didn't respond to that. 3 days ago, I killed 27 men. So, okay. That's a challenge.
That he counted, right? That he, it's not like...
He looks a little forlorn there. Not much to say to that, huh? He says, you were enraged all the way to the bone. And these men, they had earned this rage. He says, you're looking for an excuse. No, my friend, I'm straining to understand. Because if you tell me that these 27 men were innocents, then you have everything, then you are everything you have always feared yourself to be, and you would have to be stopped. And you would stop me? No, but I would die trying.
Aww.
Logan looks at him like that. That's actually Logan going, I respect that, dude.
I appreciate that.
They were a cult, and they broke into town, made it afraid. They kidnapped women and girls, and they used them up. You're describing evil, my friend, and evil begets evil. Me. He says, I see. Is that your question, Logan? If that's your question, Logan, I cannot help you. You were a priest. Absolve me. Oh, that'd be wonderful if it worked like that, wouldn't it? What a world we would have. Legions of sinners all committing their crimes with abandon, safe in the knowledge that absolution was just one quick trip to the church away. And actually, there's actually kind of a world that does that right now.
Yeah, that's a very big part of. It's a very big part of a lot of Christian theology.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on your sect.
They tried it once, during the Middle Ages. Enough gold, you could be forgiven for anything. Would you like that? Such a hollow forgiveness? Do I need forgiveness? Isn't that what you're after? Sorry. Isn't that what you're after? Were those men evil? Without question. By killing them in your rage, are you evil? You are unique, Logan, and I do not speak of what has been done to you. Is the wolf evil when it culls the sickness from the herd? And, so he's suggesting that Wolverine's role is his archetype, I suppose, in the world is more of like a wolf that culls the sickness from the herd. That's kind of interesting thing to think about, I think.
Interesting way to look at it.
I mean, the thing about Wolverine is he will never accept that type of thing fully.
No.
But it is good to know that he's got friends that, see value in the fucking horrible thing that he does sometimes.
Right. He's the best at what he does, but it isn't very nice.
Yeah, I mean, because really, you have a cult of people. I mean, of course, this is fictional, but there's real cults that really exploit and abuse people and use them up. I was hearing about one the other day that was sending photos of the girl that was in the cult, having sex with all kinds of people to her family.
Oh my God! Yeah,
they didn't want anything. They weren't.
No, they just want to make her suffer. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think it was also just to show them we own you, and also, right. and the podcast that was actually Behind the Bastards, and Robert Evans couldn't understand why they would do that really, and it kind of came to me. I was like, I kind of wish I could just reach out to him and tell him I think I understand, because they're basically making it to where even if she ever escapes, she's ruined with them, basically.
Right.
They're never going to see her the same way. So they technically they will always own her in some way, and that's fucked up. Anyway,
because it's about power, right? It's they know they have it and they want to abuse it.
So yeah, I just thought that was interesting to think about, and then also a funny thing that I read. So I'd read House of M whenever Wolverine regains his memories afterward, right?
Yeah.
He technically regains them during like the alternate reality thing, but then he retains them after.
Right, after everything gets reshuffled.
But I'd never read anything immediately after that. I realized. So I never read like what does he do next? Right?
Oh, sure.
Have you?
I read like mainline X-Men right after that, but I wasn't reading Wolverine because like I didn't really like Wolverine back then. I kind of thought he was one note and overdone.
He kind of was until this is really the kind of the turning point, honestly.
Right.
So what and this is just a funny little thing that I won't get too into, but it's like fucking hilarious. So basically it picks up with that in Wolverine Origins. And not Origin, that's the miniseries that told his very beginning origin. Wolverine Origins was the ongoing, mostly written by Daniel Way, that basically dealt with him addressing these memories that he now had.
Right.
And the first thing that happens is he is everybody's Dum Dugan is in charge of SHIELD for whatever reason at the time, and he is fucking freaking out. And he is on calls with all kinds of senators and scientists and other military people in various places across the world, and everybody is fucking shitting themselves.
Oh
because they're like, he's telling me he's got his memories back. And they're like, what? Which ones? And he's like, all of them.
All of them.
And they're fucking like burning shit. They're burning papers. They're fucking shredding documents. There's a couple of guys fucking kill themselves.
Oh shit.
I was laughing so fucking hard, like, oh my god.
Oh shit.
They know he's gonna remember us what we did to him. Like,
oh yeah, no, it's boy, yeah. Yeah, local libraries often have a lot of comics. I think Greg's comment there. Check out your local library if you're looking for some comics, because they probably got some.
It's true. They my local library was instrumental in me getting back into comics as an adult after I kind of read Civil War and stuff, and then was like, oh, what else is there? And I think at that point I went and checked out some Ultimate X-Men, because that was written by that same guy. I forget his name now though. And then what else? I don't know. Anyway, but the thing about X-Men is they're mutants. It's an allegory. It's often used as an allegory for things, for
minority
certain
groups
stuff. And yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, over the years, that's been done to varying degrees of effectiveness and a little bit more on the nose than not sometimes. But in the last 5 years almost.
God, it is coming on 5 years now. Holy shit.
Yeah. Right around the time that it seems like it's going to end will be 5 years.
That's it's been a good 5 years of X-Men books though.
Absolutely. I mean, we talked about it with Blurred a little bit, but Claremont will always be Claremont, and he set the foundation in place for a lot of stuff, and he established things that can, nothing's ever going to take that away. But issue by issue, moment by moment, this is just the best era of X-Men comics in my opinion.
I think you're right. It's hard for me to admit that, but I think just the whole line is fucking killer.
Yep. The worst stuff, in my opinion, is still pretty good.
I think the books I've enjoyed the least in this. So the Astonishing Iceman. I'm like, this book is fine, but I'm thinking to I
don't know. I liked it a lot because it's just I like his attitude and shit.
That's fair.
He's just fun. He's a fun character. But yeah,
I didn't really care for it, but I'm like, wow, but this book would have been fucking killer back in the AVX time or
oh yeah,
the San Francisco era. Just oh my god, I would have killed for this book.
Yeah, you compare it to stuff like that, and it absolutely stands out as oh god, yeah.
That's the bottom here, and it's just oh god, things are great.
Well, so there's overarching villains in the comics now. If you haven't read them at all or aren't familiar, called Orchis. They were introduced in House of X, Powers of 10, those two alternating maxi series, whatever, in 2019. That introduced this current era of Krakoa and Resurrection and all this stuff. Nonetheless, Orchis is a big bastard, and so I've got right here This is this is something said by Cy Spurrier, but it's essentially Jonathan Hickman created the concept initially of Orchis, but he didn't have like a lot behind it. I've been reading about this and learning like what was really the creation of Orchis. It's like he didn't have a lot. It was just okay. So this shield has been dissolved at this point in the 616. So people that are former Shield, former Hydra, I mean, former every organization with the acronym, you know, and the spy organization, everything like that's what Orchis is made up of. And there's actually the logo. I realized the logo is a key to tell you how much of the makeup, the structure of Orchis is each one of those.
Oh, I did not know that.
So when you see the logo that's like shaded this way.
Yeah.
So it's 31% aim, 24% shield, 16% strike. Then you got sword, alpha flight. Oh, then it gets kind of problematic with hammer.
Hammer and Hydra.
Armor. And look, you know, to their credit, Hydra is the lowest represented one, but they shouldn't be there at all.
But like, I mean, AIM is also not great either, right? Because they're a spin-off of Hydra.
True. Oh, yeah,
so
that's
really
right.
It's 35% Hydra. Plus, how often have SHIELD agents also been part of Hydra? And Hammer agents? And there's Canadians, like they've got Alpha Flight. You know, those Alpha Flight, those Canadians are fucking trouble.
So, yeah, those Canadians, real problem. I mean, they want to build a wall. You're looking at the wrong border, folks.
Right.
Keep those fucking Canucks out of here. Except for Wolverine. He's the only one that's okay to, anyway, so this is how Orchis came to be, what their goal was, and all that. And this is all filled out. This is all written by Cy Spurrier and sorry, let me pull that back up, my info here. Cy Spurrier and I guess it was Jerry Duggan.
Oh, okay.
That kind of filled out the or maybe it was Kieran Gillen, actually. So this is Cy Spurrier here. He says, let me pull this down. It was Al Ewing. I'm sorry, Cy Spurrier and Al Ewing. Al and I sat down for a long time to come up with what organizational structure diagram that we're now all using as our cheat sheet. There's a few sneakily coded things in there if people want to go hunting for anagrams. It struck us that if we're going to run with this as the big bad organization, that we can slowly reveal bits of it and what it's really all about and what's behind it and what it can do. It's not just the baddie in my book, it's the baddie in all of our books. For that to work, it has to be sprawling. It has to be at least as clever as the cleverest writer. They would be holistic. They would have a holistic approach. It's not just a bunch of scientists coming up with mutant weapons. It's propaganda. It's sociology. It's a few things we haven't even mentioned yet that are really sneaky and clever. Each of us telling a story or series of stories which comes to a satisfying modular conclusions and always pick up again for the next season. But none of them will be. This is a story where the X-Men fight and beat Orchis.
Right.
So, yeah. There will be bits of that along the way, but it's always much bigger than just the stuff that goes into one book. The goal is to make each book feel really satisfying on a human character level while making sure that each perpetuate this beautiful tapestry. It's like fighting a war. You don't see planes flying over there, fighting and coming back. It's just one piece in the theater of operations. That's the thing about being in the X office. It's the nicest war I've ever fought. Anyway, I just thought that was an interesting, peek behind the curtain. So
yeah, for sure. And I think it really gets to like what makes Orchis unique versus some of the other groups in the history of X-Men that Orchis is kind of like built in the mold of just like they're kind of one motive, one method groups, right? Like this thing about mutants bothers us, we're going to solve it this way, whether it's guns or sentinels or what have you.
Right. We have one cartoonishly evil plot that we're going to do at a time kind of thing.
Right. Where this is like everything, right? It's politics, it's propaganda, it's religion, it's technology, it's biotechnology. It's time travel.
It's like with enough practice doing bigotry over the years, people make note of that. It's in the same way that like, people who are anti-bigotry, right? Well, we'll tend to mark the successes and the wins and like, glad we're past that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Well, the people that lost, though, they're also marking down things.
Right.
They're also
taking
making
notes.
they're making their own version of history and like, what did we do wrong?
Right.
And that led to this, in both in real life and in Orchis, and as well as like the creation that we talked about with Blurred again. We talked about how writers and artists today seem to benefit from the decades prior of writers and artists. Whereas like,
right.
For one thing, you have writers and artists today that started out wanting to write and draw comic books.
Yes, you do.
Which is not what, just 20, 30 years ago. Chris Claremont didn't start out like, I want to write comics. You know what I mean? So it's like a thing that people ended up doing rather than so you kind of they hit the ground running a lot more these days, I think. Rather than like trying to find their footing with the medium.
And I think with something like, the X-Men office, right? Like that's a 60-year-old property at this point with a lot of history.
Mm-hmm.
And because you had some real long runners like Claremont, that like you have a lot to build off of, right? Where it's not starting from scratch.
Yeah, I mean, and to go back to what we were saying earlier, this era would absolutely not be possible without Claremont.
No.
Having done what he did, just to make that clear. I don't want anybody to think that I'm like putting him down.
Yeah, I don't think you could do it without him or even like Bendis.
But he's still very much like, even today, he still talks about the X-Men in this, like, it's mine, it was my vision kind of thing. And it's like, I get it, man. I get it. And in a lot of ways, your vision was great. But in some ways, it was, okay, whatever. This is very specific and just what you want, not necessarily what anybody feels is the best. Anyway, but this is a group of people who are presumably all, are hardcore X-Men fans and, working together. And I think that's, as someone who used to play in bands and stuff, I've always loved the, greater than the equal of some of its parts kind of artistry, where it's like, yeah, I can sit and play guitar by myself. That's cool or whatever. But like when I get with some people and we kind of do a thing that comes together and it locks in and you like look at each other like, oh my God, this is working. It's fucking great.
Oh yeah.
Anyway,
not that I have any musical talent, but
so with all that said, Orchis is benefiting from all of the years prior as well. So the initial establishment of Doomsday Network, which is, I guess, what they consider Orchis, based on evolutionary research regarding the extinction level population density of Homo sapiens superior. See the Cro-Magnon problem by Dr. Aaliyah Greger. And I just realized as I'm reading this. Yeah,
say again.
I just realized as I was reading this that like that it kind of calls to mind. I don't know if this is intentional, but the whole white replacement thing, theory bullshit. There was some studies done several years ago that when they made a lot of headlines and still get brought up that like in like I think something like 30-40 years or whatever, that white people will be a majority minority in the US.
Right.
Meaning that like there will be more white people than there are anything else. But
if you add up all the other people,
there's more. Yeah.
Right.
And I think that was kind of like what broke a lot of people's brains along with Obama.
Right. Well, I also think that like the issue with studies like that, and you've seen this with a lot of like great replacement theory writing. I guess we should explain great replacement theory because it's going to come up a few times today.
Yeah.
That is the theory. Okay. It is the conspiracy theory that there is a concerted effort to displace white people, however you want to define white people, because that's a whole other can of worms, with non-white people, however you want to define that term.
Yeah, I mean, look, if a time traveler from the 30s came to the present day, they would be like, oh, I agree, man. Fuck those Irish.
Right.
And you'd be like, wait, what? No, they're white. What? They're white? No, they're Irish.
They're Irish, right. But then like
which goes to show how stupid all that is. But
there were like, I forget which segregation laws were like, legally speaking, in the South during certain parts of segregation, Arabs were white.
Oh my God.
Like Italians and Greeks and Irish people have not always been white. Turkish people are on and off white depending on who you ask and when.
Right.
So
dumb. Anyways, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so it's like the definition of white is there is no white race. I mean, there's not really races, but if we're doing like ethnicities, right? Like it doesn't really break down cleanly that way. So yeah, but anyways, that is what great replacement theory is. And yeah, I would say this takes a lot from that, but also like in that it's a science thing, right? There's this read this problem this doctor wrote.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, sorry.
In our real world, you go back far enough and some asshole wrote a paper.
Uh-huh.
And then some other and that paper was debunked, wasn't good science. But then someone reads that and then they write a junk paper. And then but that gets debunked, right? Well, now some other asshole will cite those two papers in their third paper and so on and so forth. So then you get to the modern day where like a racialist, someone who believes in these racist theories and that there are superior races, will go, I can cite this study and that study and this study and that study.
Yeah.
Well, all of them were debunked and discredited decades ago, but it is just like, oh, look at, they're just appealing to all of these citations.
Right. They're not actually applying scientific method to
Right.
anything. They're just like looking for something to confirm their bias, which is, just still a problem today, a big problem.
Right.
And
yeah. But they're using the edifice of science to create like a facade rather than like actually doing real research and scientific research and stuff to come to a more accurate conclusion. They have their conclusion already written and they're working backwards.
Yep, pseudo eugenics type shit, exactly, McLeod.
Yeah, it is exactly eugenics bullshit.
So, with all that in mind, unfortunately, we had to put that in your mind.
Yep, sorry.
So yeah, it goes on to say recruitment of assets and strategic organizations, as well as funding from black budgets and other human-centric financial considerations. And you can, each one of these elements you could definitely relate to a real life thing.
Yeah.
So like recruitment of assets in strategic organizations, think tanks, academic, areas, media, you've got, I did a deep dive stream on Blaze Media, whenever that song came out a while back, that it was like clearly, he'd been propped up a little bit, and I did some digging, and because it's like the guy that like promoted him had Blaze Media as, part of his resume.
Weird they keep coming up.
And then you look at the people that Blaze Media has, including Eric July and Alex Stein and Duck Dynasty guy and all this shit. And it's like, these are people that are known to be disruptors of discourse kind of thing.
Right.
And it's like, they're very specifically chosen, cultivated, groomed, you might say, in order to prop them up and give them a platform to fund them and put them at the forefront of discourse so that they can fucking disrupt it and to insert their ideas and, so on. As well as funding from black budgets. You could look at black budgets as like dark money. Libertarian funded dark money is typically the thing. A lot of it comes from the Koch brothers. Well, I guess it's just the one Koch now. Absorption and adaptation of various organizational assets in a next generational infrastructure build for doomsday. Operating under the premise that there are three areas of concern: population, financial, and territorial. Orchis assets established watchdog programs to observe undetected mutant influence. There's definitely been some kind of observation happening that I think most people were not aware of for decades at this point. And it's only just now becoming clear how much certain people were paying very close attention to a lot of shit. And to,
Well, I think a lot of people, like, as much as people in the information technology field would harp on about it, but like how much of your information you give away on a daily basis and how much that is used against you, we really sleep on.
Yeah, it's like, if we are able to survive long enough, there'll one day be a revelation about this type of thing and like how much it's been affecting us, and like it'll be a lot to process. So yeah, all right. let me see. Oh yeah. Okay, so 2 years ago, Observation begins, and this was released around the same time as the House of X first began, kind of thing. 2 years ago, Observation begins. 1 year ago, Population Alert. Its instances of X gene activation have spiked, along with the reemergence of established mutant alpha types long observed as active in the mutant cause. So this was after, for several years, there was no mutant births or activations because of no more mutants. And then suddenly there were.
Right.
And this is when Orchis's protocols kind of went into effect. 6 months ago, Financial Alert. Long observed shell companies wholly owned by the mutant activist Charles Xavier quietly purchased the 7th largest pharmaceutical company in the world and recently announced 3 new drugs, which are poised to destabilize the industry and spread throughout global financial sectors. That's, I guess, one that there's not really an allegory for in real life. Because, I mean...
Well, okay, so I'm actually going to say there is, right? Like, all sides of the media really pay attention and try to pin their political enemies' bad actions on the bad actions of things like pharmaceutical companies, right? Like big pharma, right? Anti-vax movements, all the COVID denialism, which is all, conspiracy based. But also you have things like the Sackler family and the opioid crisis, where that, was we made a drug and manufactured an actual crisis and made $1 bajillion, right? So like, I think there is, if you want to talk about like,
yeah, it's just if you yeah, at the very, very surface level, sure. It's just that, like, because the drugs that Xavier's stuff created, they're actually good drugs.
They actually work, right?
They're
like
beneficial to people, and the only problem is that there had been a Sinister had done a little backdoor into them that was exploited. So
right, but also like you look at like the COVID vaccine, right? Like the medical science community worked their ass off for a year and change to make that a reality.
True.
And then you had some people work very hard to make that a bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, very much. That is definitely. I can see what you're saying. That works. So yeah. Then 2 months ago, the mutant nation of Krakoa established, and lots of bigots shit their pants. Whoops.
Right. What's the visibility problem, right? Now you have a minority that is in groups large enough to be seen.
They actually are. Well, I mean, they are declaring that we are equal. It's essentially what the establishment of Krakoa is they're saying, we're not waiting for permission to be equal. We are telling you we are, and we're giving you no choice in the matter. And that's what they didn't like. Because a lot of people are somewhat okay with mutants, as long as they're not like getting too uppity, right? They don't want them dead or anything, just that keep them to their place. As long as they know their place, right? And that's how certain people are, sadly, in real life. Now, Bob, we have not hit Rufo yet. We're just kind of setting the groundwork for Orchis and how that relates to And actually, it's kind of working kind of well because we're setting some establishing some groundwork that is kind of necessary for Rufo as well.
Right.
It's almost like we did it on purpose. So observation ends. Orchis protocols enacted. So the Cro-Magnon problem by Dr. Leah Gregor began as humanitarian research into mutant repopulation following the Genocidal genocide, which resulted in the death of over 16 million mutants. Dr. Gregor postulated that, despite best efforts, mutantdom would not be able to repopulate to significant enough numbers to become the eventual dominant species of Homo sapiens on Earth, due to factors including environmental, technological, and specific scientific advancements in genetic engineering and artificial intelligence. What she found disproved her theory. Not only were mutants reappearing at a higher rate than expected, but a regression analysis of previous growth patterns of mutants revealed that, if not for Genocidal, mutants would have become the dominant species on Earth within 10 years due to cascading biological, cultural, mutant positive variables. Notice that cultural aspect there.
Right. And that's a weird thing because, like, there wasn't a mutant culture till there was Krakoa, right? Like, not really.
I mean, that's one of the, we haven't talked about it much, but that's really one of the most awesome things that this whole era has done, is just like, it's legitimately created culture of mutants.
Well, right.
And like,
well, and I think to bring it, to tie it back into our real life villain for today, because like her theory it predates Krakoa, right? Like, she was saying these pressures already existed, and you look at how much they try to make it about the homosexual agenda, the transgender agenda, etc., right? It is creating a unified culture where there is none. Even like, to go back further, like a lot of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, a lot of Islamophobic conspiracy theories sort of presume that these minority groups have a uniform opinion and culture, when that is ahistoric.
yes. Bob, we will, if you remind us, I'm gonna star your comment here. We will, I'll give you that toward the end. But so what was I gonna say? Shit. Yeah. Well, it's weird. It's almost like, I think somebody said this one time, something about streams and politics and culture or something like that. But I don't know, some asshole.
Yeah. But also just think, like, because X-Men is sort of not always, but for a long time been very keyed into these sort of like bigoted groups versus minorities, the history of that, and that you have a lot of like devoted fans running the X office now, that they really, it feels like they work to tie a lot of that in, that you can see the real world politics and how they've influenced the X-Men politics over the years, and how that all blends really seamlessly in a lot of ways.
It really does. And I mean, it helps that, like, at least, it's kind of, I guess, unfortunate, or I don't know what the circumstances were that led to this, but when Krakoan era started off, there were several women, several queer people, several people of color working on the books.
Yep.
Now there are fewer.
And it is a shame.
I mean, I know Kieran Gillen is queer. I know that, and I think that's about it as far as I know. I mean, of course, people are allowed to have their privacy as well.
Right.
So who knows? But yeah, that definitely, I don't think there's any. Well, I guess I don't know what a couple of the writers look like Steve Orlando and stuff. I don't know. I mean, could be people of color I'm not aware of. Who knows? But generally, sorry, what's his name? Fox, I think it is. Orlando, or maybe both of them are both gay. So the guy whichever one was writing Iceman, I was looking at him a little bit.
Oh, okay, cool.
I forget his name. Anyways, I mean, how is it really incorrect though?
I would say
I feel like
there's
a
co-linked morbidities with them, right? Because I think, like, okay, so look at how much the politics of 9/11 affected culture, right? In that instance, culture was downstream of politics.
Yes. Well, yeah, I mean, I would say that there are certain
they're kind of inseparable, and they influence each other in different ways.
Well, I mean, that was kind of a seismic moment or two, that like there are certain moments that will happen that I think JFK assassination type shit. That's like, oh, fucking, just there's a big ass spike in the stream there.
Anyway, right. But I think that they are very intermingled.
Yeah. I mean, it's really just a starting point to think about these concepts as being, kind of symbiotic in a way.
It turns out, because that's a saying by a shitbird conservative. It turns out like a lot of those things sound true on the surface, and they may even be, partially true, but you can take them apart and analyze them and get a better truth.
Yeah, it has that feedback loop, I'd say, is, and that's been made possible due to social media for sure.
Oh, so social media is the river delta of culture and politics and
look,
cyber warfare.
I guess credit, I suppose, to fucking chuds for this, but like they've seized on that and pretty effectively.
Yeah.
And you know, they seem to come out ahead in the game when it comes to the confusion created, the nonsense that's put out there as opposed to anyone else.
It turns out when you can lie infinitely at infinite volume and depth,
yeah, it's
which we're going to get to later on as well.
Yeah, I mean that's literally what this is about.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to this. We'll finish this off real quick just to let's see. So yeah, Dr. Greger's new timeline suggests that humanity has 20 years left. So Orchis was enacted whenever essentially there'd been people paying attention, and then you know, money was probably waiting to be injected into this situation. You know, just like there is in real life. You know, there's a reason why, you know, that, like we talked about it the other day, there's content that is so fucking good that is not seen by anybody.
Right.
Because it's because YouTube is not about good content.
No, it's about engagement, because Google is an advertising firm that happens to run a media company and a search engine.
Yep. Exactamundo. In fact, let me I want to show something real quick. It's a quick thing, and it is relevant actually, but it's not something I plan to show till right now.
So while is that taking a minute to pull up? Like
yeah.
You're on a bit of a tangent. Okay, so we were talking in the House of F Discord, which if you're not a member, you should become a member. Check that out in the link in the down below, I imagine.
I think so. If not, I'll pull a link in a minute.
About this new game, what is it called? Pal Park or something? It's a Pokemon clone where like they very clearly used AI to make the models and stole a lot of fan art and official Pokemon art to make their critters, but it's hugely popular. But the whole thing was it seems kind of AstroTurf to me, just because like it was made to look like a meme and be very memeable. And the company that made it was involved in like NFTs and crypto. And so like they were already tied into that sort of meme space mentality.
Yeah.
So it just seems like, because this is not the first type of game that, you know, in that like Pokemon clone genre, but it's hit really big this week. It just came out last week. And it just feels to me like it was because it was forced by this like social media manipulation to be memeable, and therefore because it's memeable, it's, you know, meme spread, right? They're like a virus. They're brain viri. And so it became popular not on its own quality, but as this like as a meme, basically.
Yeah.
That you could spend $60 to buy. Which is, I mean, basically an NFT at that point, right? Like, so that was just an interesting chat we had in the House of F Discord earlier today, which I'm trying to be more active on again now that I have some free time for the next half hour.
Crap. Okay, here we go.
All right.
Took a second for my computer. I want to pull this up. So this is just like a how long is it? Not even. It's a little over a minute long, but man, it says a lot. And this channel, before you watch this, I want you to know this channel has like, I don't know, 2,000 subscribers.
Tired of explaining your unwavering support for guns amid constant mass shootings? Having a hard time selling people on slashing Social Security and Medicare? How's a good Republican supposed to explain all this stuff? Guess what? You don't have to, because you've got anti-woke everything. Skip that uncomfortable policy junk and stick to the culture wars. Look, a gay M&M. See how easy it is? All you need are a few unrelated issues and plenty of outrage, and you're on your way to anti-woke everything. Of course, you could try to explain how Republicans helped add $5 trillion to the debt when they gave rich people a huge tax cut. Or you could tell people Joe Biden is coming to take away their gas stoves. Congratulations, you're now an anti-woke cooking crusader. Anti-woke everything works great for toilets, light bulbs, bathrooms, fashion, fictional characters, books, and of course, plain old speech. Why talk about your unpopular policies when you can be outraged about candy, cooking, and cartoon characters? Anti-woke everything. Let the culture wars work for you.
Yep.
That's so good.
So good. And then, just to, see, I saw it in here. I saw it. I swear to God. Where's it at? I'm trying to pause it right on the thing just because it's relevant.
Relevant. I think I know what you're looking for. I think I saw it in there too. There it is.
Well, there's comic book, and then there's arugula. Really? I didn't even know about the arugula one.
I guess so.
CRT. It's CRT is the one that was looking
it's
for.
CRT, yeah. CRT is the
lesbian cartoon villain. Yep. I
Yeah,
mean, well, that's what they all are now, according to Ethan Van Sciver. They're all just like blackballed lesbians,
I'm one of those things, but you'll have to guess yourself. They definitely put the fashion fascism. The fashion.
Yeah.
Chandler, you get 1 point. Spend it wisely.
Just one. All right. So, yeah, and the thing about Orchis is, as has been revealed little by little, but definitely since the fall of X began, they've been talking. Dr. Stasis is he's I'm not going to get too into the weeds on it, but he's a Mr. Sinister clone. But really, so is Mr. Sinister a clone of another guy? It doesn't matter. Point being, Dr. Stasis is a version of the same guy that begat Mr. Sinister. They have the same end goal with different tactics of getting there. There's actually 4 of them that all have different paths of trying to achieve the same result. But Dr. Stasis, whereas Mr. Sinister is all about genetics and like trying to use mutants and whatever else he can to create genetic supremacy for himself so that he can be the best thing ever, basically. But whereas Dr. Stasis's path to that is to just eradicate anything that is not human.
So
fascist,
keep things in
eugenics.
stasis. Yeah, eugenics.
Yeah. He's been incredibly effective at it. He's only part of Orchis, but he's an important part.
Right.
He's the human relations public relations kind of guy. I was trying to find an image of him. I had some somewhere. No, I don't know where the fuck I put him, but you think I'd be a little more prepared.
Like it's a reveal that he is one of these 4 Sinisters. Like you
yeah,
don't
I
figure
guess
that out right away.
I should have spoiler alerted that. I'm sorry. My bad.
Because initially he is a guy. He is a guy in a fishbowl helmet.
Mm-hmm.
Cool looking fishbowl helmet, but like
yeah, he's got good taste. I'll give him that.
If you are related to Nathaniel Essex at all, you have just the finest of fashion senses.
Yep, he's the head of the human resources pedal. And what that really means is he's a propagandist.
Yeah.
And in that he has been very open, and at least in his internal communications within Orchis, that of what his goals are, and how they're, the point of what they're doing, and what he really wants to do, and so on and so forth. And in several recent communications, he has talked about how we're on our way. We've managed to take down this Krakoan state. We've got mutants on, they're basically spread out. They're off planet. They're, we're doing it. And then once we get Cyclops, spoiler alert for what's going on right now. Once Cyclops is tried, found guilty in Paris, and executed for, all to see for all the mutants' crimes, then public support will be on our side enough that we can move on to, dealing with those Avengers and those Fantastic Four and all these these goody two shoes with their superpowers that don't like fascism and stuff.
And that really have turned up their anti-fascism dial lately.
Yeah, it's been pretty cool. I've actually got I do have a folder that's marked Marvel anti-fascism somewhere that we could look at a couple of those incidents. Marvel anti-fascism here. So just to give a taste of that, because it came up, so I got to show it. Here is just one page from the newest Thunderbolt series, which is explicitly going after Nazis and Red Skull in particular. Good times. You can, like I told Morgan, you can hear the hip hop music in this page right here.
You really can.
Let's see. Then there's You got the new Destroyer, which is actually Sharon Carter.
Oh, damn.
And that's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
I'm going to try very hard not to complain about how they did her dirty in the MCU, but that is just my professional opinion.
Yeah, maybe she'll turn around. Who knows?
We'll see.
She calls them cosplay Goebbels here. That's pretty funny. And then blows them the fuck up. She's got, here's just right on the cover. You got him having assassinated Red Skull. And then here is spoiler alert for Fall of the House of X #1. You got Colossus explicitly calling them fascists. Anybody, let's see, and tell all the murderers in red that anybody aligned with fascism will die squirming under my metal foot.
Fucking love it.
Yeah, I mean, look, they've kind of pushed, I won't spoil this, but they definitely pushed Colossus way too far.
Yep. That guy has had enough.
Anyway, so that is going on. There's actually several more incidents, and I plan to, do a video maybe I'll do a stream segment. We're just looking at how goddamn based Marvel is being right now with explicit anti-fascism.
Yes.
And if you ever want evidence that the chuds have no effect on this stuff, right? Like they have no effect. In fact, if anything, they just encourage them the same way that they encourage me and Bob and Turf and stuff. Because if they had an effect, they wouldn't be doing this. They wouldn't be,
right.
They might tell similar stories to what they're telling, but they wouldn't be explicitly saying fuck fascism in fucking comics the way that they're doing.
Well, anyway. And I think it really, like when you're talking about a company like Marvel, because the big two are companies, right? Mm-hmm. They are bean counter driven industries.
Yeah. To be clear, anytime I'm talking about something like this and I'm saying Marvel, and I'll try and be more specific in the future, I don't mean fucking corporate Marvel. I'm talking about the creators who are working.
The creators, right. But like the bean counters let these writers go off because they see the numbers, right? They're like, this is killing.
Yep. Yeah, if it was affecting their sales, they would.
It would stop in a heartbeat.
I mean, to be honest, that's the reason that they're doing this Fall of Krakoa now, because I mean, from what I can tell, it seems like the sales started dipping.
Right.
With Krakoa, and this is the brilliance of Jonathan Hickman. Of course, had accounted for this. He knew that at some point it might not be as popular if it even got popular.
Right.
And
they left themselves out from the beginning.
Yep, it was basically the Moira thing and the Sinister thing were the two necessary elements for like this is when we can pull the plug anytime we want to,
right?
And do it our way, and they're doing it awesomely. Anyways, so but the thing about fascists and like Orchis and being fascists is they're essentially they're all eugenicists.
Pretty much, yeah.
They have decided that there's a certain type of person that is the right kind of person, the only acceptable kind of person, at least to have any rights, and in some more extreme cases, to even exist. And yeah, eugenics is bad, guys.
Well, okay. Like to bring Orchis back into the real world when they're talking about like, oh, after we do in the mutants, we're gonna do in all these other groups. The thing about fascism is that it will always shrink the tent. It will try to be a big tent initially, and then just it tightens the noose around itself, which is one of the reasons it's kind of self-defeating over a period of time. But
I forget the guy's name, but the perfect example is a guy who was a literal Nazi who helped establish the National Socialists in Germany. He was explicitly fascist Nazi. But he was gay, and he was good friends with one Adolf Hitler. They were buddies. They were very good friends.
And then Hiddleston had him killed.
Hiddleston, as soon as they took power, and there's a lot Night of Long Knives and all that, like he was one of the guys that there's like, well, okay, but he served his purpose, but he's a gay guy, so we gotta,
we don't need him anymore.
So yeah, they will use people up, and that's the thing about when you see minorities that are for whatever reason they're choosing to help these ideas along, eventually their usefulness will run out.
Quislings get the wall eventually too.
Useful tokens, yeah. But yeah, so that's how essentially it's all based on eugenics. Strasser, I think that maybe you're right.
Might be it, yeah.
And speaking of eugenics, I think you got an article for us.
Yeah, let's pull this bad boy up. So I've got it shared. If you can just do the thing. So this is an article. It's a full spread on the New York Times. So they've got this like crazy intro thing. They've looked at all these emails from politicians and think tanks. It's called America is Under Attack, the Inside of the Anti-DEI, what's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Crusade. And this is from today's, January 20th, 2024, or yesterday's rather, was when it was written, but I think it was published today in the Sunday Times. And this goes into a lot of the people involved behind all these pushes. I'm going to just pop up one of these here. Fine, I'm going to put my buddy Chris Rufo, and he gets a couple of mentions in here.
Oh, look at that. Thanks, New York Times.
And the New York Times is nice enough to even link me the tweet.
Thanks for doing something useful for once.
For fucking once in your life. Yeah.
Well, not in their life, but in the last several fucking years for sure. Like, Jesus Christ.
I have complained about the New York Times and their shitty fucking coverage of a lot of the issues that they lay out in this article as being bad. That they either both sides or they like, oh, but they've got a point. New York Times has done a lot of hand wringing to help these fuckers, and I'm glad they've come around, but also fuck them.
And I just want to say too that like before we get even into this stuff, I want to express to anybody that wonders like what if you're watching and you ever think you don't hear these people out enough, like you're always just so hardline against here even listening to what they're saying kind of thing. It's like, well, no, for one thing, I do listen to what they've said. I just recognize that their very premises are flawed,
right?
And I feel like this shit gets enough leeway, enough, discourse real estate that I'm not going to be one to fucking do it.
Right. Well, what is the it goes back to the classic question about centrism. Okay, so what is the center between I want to kill all the gays and I would like to not die, right? Like, I would like there not to be slavery, and I would like slaves. What's the middle ground there? Find me the center.
Well, the middle ground is misinformation and lack of comprehension of the state of things. That's really the only way that you can exist in the middle. Honestly, being honest with yourself is to not understand the factors at play and to just bought into misinformation.
Right.
I think. Yeah.
I would agree, but this article really does a pretty good job laying out a lot of the forces behind that, and Chris Rufo is a major player with his whole big anti-CRT, and that's critical race theory. Which for
you guys
those
heard of that?
Yeah, well, you've probably heard of CRT, but they very rarely use what it means, and also they don't really talk about what it is because we can pull this motherfucker up, and in the asshole's own words, I will read the tweet. We have successfully frozen their brand critical race theory into the public conversation and are steadily driving up negative perceptions. We will eventually turn it toxic as we put all the various cultural insanities under that brand category. This is part of a thread, but I'm not signed into Twitter on this computer, so I can just pull up this one part of the tweet.
Well, like, and just to be clear, he on purpose wrote this in public. Like, holy shit. Like, this is the reason why this guy, it's almost like if he was being more like cloak and dagger about it, people would be more aware of him, maybe.
Right.
You know what I mean?
He's out there saying it. And so, like, how do you, it makes it hard to accuse him of anything because he's public about all of his plans, right? Like, there is no secrecy. He's just out there saying it. So what critical race theory is,
yeah, the chat's got it right about what it actually is.
I mean, that is what,
to a degree.
So what it is, it's it's a legal theory that U.S. law, because our law is usually additive, right? We very rarely repeal laws. We just add more laws on to the books. And they're supposed to supersede, but they don't always. That because because segregation was built into our legal framework and has not been removed wholly, that structural system will always enforce racism in some ways. And this legal theory is not actually like a predominant legal theory. It's a niche legal theory. It would be hard to get on a court if you were like a law professor and a judge who espoused critical race theory, even before Chris Rufo made it a thing, before he made this whole moral panic around it. it's a niche legal theory. But because it's a niche legal theory and you have to be a fucking nerd to know about it, it works as a thing you can weaponize.
Well, and this, and to keep it, to kind of relate it back to comics and how this stuff is exactly the same tactic as like the culture war bullshit is,
right.
That it's weaponized ignorance. So like, the people that actually think that the stories are bad and that's why comics aren't selling, that don't understand the fucking, kind of like paradigm shift of consumption and distribution in the last several years. Like, it's a gap of understanding that is filled in with what people's biases want to hear, essentially.
So to answer Maestro's question, indigenous studies is actually not part of critical race theory, the legal study. That is a whole other separate legal set of legal studies. And actually, noted asshole Judge Gorsuch, who's on the Supreme Court, is actually like weirdly good on indigenous rights and like tribal rights. It's kind of interesting. It's like the one thing he's good on.
I mean, so literally tweeted, but I mean, like, you're going to learn, Reggie, how like he's actually done quite a bit of work outside of tweeting that got him into that position. But yeah,
right. So we'll pull over because I've got the tabs up I can show. So this guy didn't just come out of nowhere. He worked for the Heritage Foundation for a bit before ending up at the Discovery Institute. And you're like,
they
Morgan,
must
what's the
discover...
Discovery Institute?
It's about as good as the Discovery Channel. Okay.
It's worse. So the Discovery Institute. Have anyone here know what the Ark Park is? The Ark Encounter.
Oh, the Ken Ham thing?
The Ken Ham thing. This is Ken Ham, who is a creationist, Christian dominionist organization that sort of got its legs under it in the early 2000s as pushing intelligent design and other lies to replace evolution with Christianity in public schooling.
Even though Ken Ham kind of looks exactly like a fucking Neanderthal.
Well, he looks like his Amish Wolverine. To bring it back to years above, he's Amish Wolverine.
Good times. All right.
Shout out to the Scathing Atheist podcast for that one. But yeah. So he got his start doing work for them.
Wow.
That's sort of where he got his big name going. He was a fellow there for a while, and now he is with the Manhattan Institute, which is one of these billionaire think tanks that basically their funders, their financiers tell them, make something that looks official and scientific that hits this conclusion, and then they fucking hammer it out.
Yeah, it's conclusion first, quote unquote science.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and it's funny how they call themselves the Manhattan Institute, because Manhattan is a word that most people are going to associate with, like, liberalism and
right.
Like progress and stuff like that. And it's like, nah. And that had to have been done on purpose. It had to.
It had to be, right. Or like trying to play off of the Manhattan Project.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah. And they talk about how his alma mater is from Harvard. But what if that wasn't exactly true? So this is from the New Republic. So he went to the Harvard Extension School, which is not the same thing. And this article goes into details on the differences.
Well, I mean, maybe he doesn't understand the difference. Maybe he doesn't realize the difference, and that I mean, we don't have any proof that he realizes that there is like a different body that is responsible there, or that they have like a different president or anything, right? Like,
well, I mean, he did work very hard to get.
I know. I was trying to find a segue there. I just couldn't do it.
Right. We can pull that one up over here too.
Yeah.
So, and he's of course, surprise, surprise, a eugenicist. He's got links to a eugenicist, who was involved in this. Harvard's former president was ousted, by part of Chris Rufo's efforts were involved in that, and he got this eugenicist to work with him on that.
Yes. And there's some questionable stuff going on there. I have not looked into the plagiarism accusations. I definitely think that, like, I watched some of the clips from that what is it, Senate or House?
There's a House hearing, yeah.
And then look, these presidents did not do a good job there. Like her, and then one other lady I saw that's kind of gone under the radar, but she's also a white lady. I wonder if there's something to that.
Yeah, why did the black lady get all the attention and not the white lady?
Kind of weird, but like
I wonder.
They both did not do strong enough. Like the things that they said. I don't know where they're coming from with that. Like, it's like they were doing legal speak to kind of like,
right,
cover all their bases and not say anything that, or whatever. But like in the context of the questions they were asked, and in the era of the, in the atmosphere of what's going on with Israel right now and everything, it just did not come off too well. And they seized on that. Chud seized on that shit. And then there's the plagiarism stuff was brought up like immediately after that. Somehow, for whatever reason,
right?
It's like, oh well, we found that she's also done some plagiarism. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know, but it
was one of those things that it's that infinite lies and infinite volume and depth, right? Like when you fart out so much bullshit, how can you even find the truth in a relevant amount of time for the discourse?
Yeah. I mean, and it's like, it seems like she might have just quit as like this is causing more bullshit for the school I care about potentially,
right?
Than is necessary. But of course, that became a huge win for them.
Yeah.
If not like ultimately, what happens at Harvard isn't a big fucking deal, I don't think. But like the fact that they successfully did that, it emboldens them, and that's the problem.
Well, here, it's so weird with the right wing. We're like, you have Chris Rufo trying to trade on Harvard as a credential, but the right is so anti-intellectual they have to like demonize Harvard the institution while propping up people who graduated from Harvard. I mean, look at all the people in Trump's orbit, for instance, that were Harvard alums. It's a rich people's school, right? Like,
well, I mean, it's kind of like how with Fandom Menace and like, Disney's bad, Marvel's bad, it's MCU, but then like Avatar comes out and it's like not immediately as obviously, I guess, to some chuds, the same kind of woke. So they're like championing that, right? Like, because that's a good one. And even though that's also Disney, like they will use whatever it's nihilism. Ultimately, nihilism is at the root of all this shit. They don't really believe in anything except for power's sake.
Well, that goes exactly back to the tweet, right? We're trying to wrap up everything we don't like under a brand, so we can all say the same thing, and that's what woke is, right? It's a snarl word. It is like a thought-terminating cliche that you hear and you just assume it's bad, and you might have your own perception of what woke is and why it's bad, and I might have a different one. But as long as we're both complaining about things being woke, we can tell ourselves that we all mean the same thing.
Yep. Yeah, they want to turn Harvard into a conservative institution, and they have a blueprint for how to do that now.
Right.
Somebody, I did not know this, McLeod. Thank you for that update. DeSantis is out.
Oh yeah, I put that in the House of F Discord earlier today. But yeah, he also endorsed Trump. So
of course he did. Of course, now he's going to try and get a fucking VP spot at least. Or I mean, not at least. Life. VP, he'll settle for whatever Trump fucking tosses him, but he's gonna, fucking pure I think fucking cowardice.
His position will be official Trump salad tosser.
Yeah, you're right. Which is disgusting to think about.
It really is, isn't it? What's funny is Harvard is a conservative institution,
right?
Like, it is. I'm sorry.
I mean, there are liberals. There are a lot of liberals there.
There are a lot of liberals there, but it is.
They're like Ivy League liberals, which is it's essentially just for all intents and purposes conservative.
It's conservatives who don't want you to know they're conservative, right? They're the difference between a Harvard conservative and a American conservative is they are publicly embarrassed by their racism.
Mm-hmm. Well, and because they're just, I mean, it's that, I suppose it could also be just that they are smart enough to, or clever enough, I suppose, in the sense that they know how to get ahead, that being openly racist can be detrimental to that. they've been taught by their fucking, their families that have been, deep in some racism for generations, that like, well, you can't say this stuff publicly because you got to maintain your privilege and your class, your status kind of thing.
Well, it's, you ask a conservative about the problem with New York liberals, and you ask a liberal about the problem with New York liberals, and they both have problems with them, but for very different and very interesting reasons.
So now that this is just kind of thinking about this now, like Rufo was very much in the pocket, attached at the hip to DeSantis and his campaign. Rufo essentially wrote the Stop Woke Act, more or less. He wrote the playbook for how to talk about this stuff, right? And DeSantis
the college
followed
takeover bill there, and
it wasn't good enough it wasn't successful enough, and this is probably just mostly because DeSantis is unlikable and a fucking stupid asshole. He's got no charisma, but like I would imagine now that DeSantis is freed up, or suppose that role is no longer as necessary, he's probably going to gravitate to Trump now. Rufo.
Oh yeah. So I mean, Trump already, in one of these articles, he already had been involved with Trump's stuff before, like, so he'll just end up back in that rotation, right?
Yeah, I mean, the I guess one possible I guess not benefit, but like good thing is that within that is that Trump has been kind of weird about like being anti-woke. There was one point he was actually saying that it doesn't even mean anything, which is like directly at odds with Rufo's thing.
Right.
So, but that might just be what Rufo does, is kind of lets him know, hey, don't say that, say the opposite of that, and you'll be all right. But anyway, this Rufo guy. So the reason that he reminds me of Stasis a bit, I think, is just how he's got it fucking figured out. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like he knows exactly the pressure points, and he knows how to make it happen. And he's like, it's upsetting because look, if I was playing a video game, this guy would be somebody that I would have to deal with.
Right. There is something about how he speaks publicly that is over the top and comic booky, but he doesn't he's not doing it on like the national stage in a way where like he's getting up at a political rally or he's giving big stump speeches for politicians. Like he does interviews and stuff. And he's very public online. But when you read it, how he talks is this just blatantly evil, fucked up shit. And I think because he's so open about it in a way that he doesn't use the bigoted words that just sort of like lulls people into a false sense of security.
Right.
And when we were talking about planning this episode, it was funny because we were complaining about how major news outlets kind of let him fly under the radar. Like New Republic isn't a big news outlet. Guardian is a little bigger. But like the New York Times covered him today. So like, good for them. You know what? Good for them.
And another thing is, I guess one aspect of this episode that we might need to revisit is that Stasis isn't the only one that there's a real life correlator to. We've mentioned that I think before though, but there's a Philong that is he's actually just an effective, actually intelligent version of Musk.
Yeah, he's like, what if Musk was purple and moderately competent?
Yep. So it's there's a lot of. Sorry, I got distracted a bit by looking at X-Men pictures.
Just looking at X-Men again.
I'll say also, I'll add this: Trump, he's a real Nimrod. Got him.
Bam.
And there's other things that like I'd mentioned to Morgan as well that like we could talk about. I don't know if there's a whole episode for it, but like there's kind of archetypes, I suppose, within like what's her name? The scientist lady, I forget her name.
Gregor,
yeah, that's it. Gregor, who her husband was killed I believe by Mystique in House number 4 or whatever issue that was, where all the X-Men died. And she's, I mean, she of course she was already kind of like involved with Orchis and whatnot, but like now she's very obviously motivated by this grief. And there are people who, you know, attach themselves to bigotry and being, you know, because of whatever perceived, you know, something, maybe something real that happened in their life, but like, yeah, and that stuff is activated a lot by these people. That's just one aspect of the propaganda campaigns is, you know, preying on people's real, valid emotions in some cases, triggering them and pointing them at the enemy they want them to have. Nonetheless, I gotta stop looking at X-Men pictures. So, it's crazy he's so open about it, but the thing is, he's giving them the blueprint. He's giving conservatives the blueprint for how to do this. He's showing like, look, you don't have to be afraid to just say what you're doing and do it. Like, and here's here's the pressure points. Here's, you know, in that way, he's kind of worse than Stasis, because I don't know if Stasis is like giving, you know, open seminars on how to be an effective fascist.
I feel like he is, right? Like, I feel like given his position, right, that he is that sort of person, right? He's not going out and doing the groundwork, but he is having these sorts of conversations.
Yeah. Speaking of the sorts of conversations that he's been having, let's get to that, because shout out to Danimal the Bruce, who had sent me some stuff about this when he heard that we were talking about Rufo today.
Yeah.
Just good looking out, man. I don't know if he's in chat or not.
See him in chat today, but if he watches this or watches the replay, shout out to you. You rock.
So let me just pull this up here. Have any of you heard of the phrase, the acronym NETTR? NETTR.
I have not.
Okay. So this is a Guardian article from October 11th of last year that talks about NETTR and what that means, and you might start seeing it more often.
Oh boy.
Let's see if anybody knows it real quick before us get into it. No, NETTR.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it.
All right. So what it stands for is no enemies to the right.
Ah.
And what that means is, as Christopher Rufo held a Twitter space back at this point in October last year, a conversation that he hosted and discussing conservatives cooperating with extremists to destroy the power of the left. So when you get into where he sits on the ideological spectrum, this actually did help me out a lot, because it does get kind of hard to not see all conservatives as just like fucking the far right fascists at this point. But I think there actually still are some that are, at least, even if they're, you know, they want to be that, or they're cool with how they're actually uncomfortable with aligning themselves with open far right fascists, right?
Right.
But this is what Christopher Rufo's goal was with this conversation, was to say, hey, and of course he comes out and says that no, those people are actually immoral, they're politically wrong. He said that, like talking about Nazis and you know, white nationalists and whatnot. But that doesn't matter whenever you're literally hosting a fucking Twitter space that essentially is allowing the conversation to happen, that no, we need to kind of just be okay with it. So
right.
Yeah. Christopher Rufo, close ally of DeSantis, hosted a social media debate in which one participant argued that conservatives should cooperate with a hypothetical white nationalist dictator in order to destroy the power of the left. Rufo, a Manhattan Institute fellow, has been hugely influential in DeSantis' culture war policies, did not disagree with the participants' sentiments. Instead, he commended speakers for their thoughtful points and presenting the discussion as a model of engagement with the dissident right. Rufo is a high-profile conservative activist. And knowing what we have already established about Rufo, he's a fucking smart guy. He's really smart.
He's very smart, which is why, like, when you're talking about the Harvard thing, right? Like, he knows.
He's not doing this thinking, no, well, I'm literally just having a conversation about this. We're not. He wants this conversation to go a certain way, is what he wants. He's a high-profile conservative activist who, in books, columns, media appearances, and a Substack newsletter, has encouraged conservatives to oppose wokeness. He's been credited with mobilizing conservatives against communities of color, first with a distorted version of critical race theory. And look, we talked about CRT. We haven't even gotten into the number 2 successful campaign that this motherfucker has been waging, but you've all seen it. by linking LGBTQ inclusive education practices to pedophilic grooming. So the groomer thing, that's Rufo too.
That's Rufo too.
What a piece of shit.
And that one is differently scummy because it's important to know when you're looking at like where actual grooming happens in America. It happens in churches. It happens in small communities where you're isolated and don't have access to outside information.
Yeah. Hey, what's up, Michael? Welcome.
Hey, yeah, Bob, this is exactly why we're like, this guy is, we're going to tie him to a comic book villain because that's exactly what he fucking is.
It's crazy. You know, it's like, it's in the same way that like, you know, comic book villains are known for doing their, I'm going to reveal my entire plan and, you know, and stuff. And it's like become actually a joke and a trope because like, you know,
who would
nowadays,
do that?
Right. Nowadays, villains will say, I'm not a comic book villain. I'm not going to tell you my whole thing or whatever. Ozymandias had a famous line about that in Watchmen. Well, now it's like, well, okay, apparently we were all wrong about that. We were giving people too much credit.
We're going
because
to put it on Twitter.
Apparently you can just do that. And people are like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, and Galvatron, that is exactly what we were talking about before the show, is that like, yeah, Rufo is a much bigger issue. We just don't know it, and we can't directly contain him as easier.
Anybody that like, if Trump just like, I don't know, had a fucking aneurysm or, you know, more likely, I guess, a massive coronary episode incident today and was no longer around tomorrow, right? Like if like all of the leading candidates happen to just be on the same plane and like, you know, the plane goes down or something like that, which FBI, CIA, Secret Service, I'm not going to do anything in anybody's plane. Okay. But anyway, if that happened, we would still have a massive problem because Rufo exists.
Right. There will always be another Trump. You can always find another, well, maybe not a Trump because he's a whole special confluence of bullshit, but
yeah,
you can find another strongman fascist.
All hail Megatron.
All hail Megatron.
All right. So, and by the way, you were talking about, and this is talking about schools and churches and whatnot. You were talking about that. One place that have you guys ever seen the account on social media called End Wokeness?
Sadly,
it is very, very popular. And they are fascists, man. They are fucking white supremacist fascists. Whoever's running that account, like, it's just openly in a lot of cases, like all but saying we're that. And that's the kind of. But then you've also got people who consider themselves centrists or even just like moderate conservatives who they're also very much against wokeness or whatever. And it's like that just goes to show how fucking you know, how broad that word is and everything that fits underneath it, right?
Well, and it's, you know, sort of goes back to what we're talking about with, you know, the efficacy of these terminologies and these thought terminating cliches is that it allows you to have that cognitive dissonance.
Yep. So Rufo has exercised particular influence on DeSantis. He reportedly consulted on the drafting of Stop Woke Act, which bans schools and workplace from teaching that anyone is inherently privileged due to race or sex, and was invited by DeSantis to witness the bill's signing. Later, DeSantis appointed Rufo to the board of trustees of Florida's New College in January. So New College was traditionally a liberal college, but DeSantis wanted to make a point with it. So he did, and it's now has become a conservative institution. A move that many say heralds DeSantis' view of the future of academia in Florida and the U.S. So with that in mind, it's thank God he lost, right? But like that plan is not just off the table now.
No.
So yeah, participating in the debate was Charles Haywood, a former shampoo magnate.
Oh my God.
Who the Guardian previously reported is a would-be warlord who founded a secretive men's-only fraternal society, the Society for American Civic Renewal. So Fight Club, you know, Project Mayhem shit.
Oh my God. What an absolute dork, right? Like, not only did you fight you create your men-only secret society, you gave it a goddamn acronym.
It's not even a good one.
No, it's terrible.
Like, at least call it SAC. Like, find a way to make it SAC.
Or you could be the Society for Civic American Renewal, and then it's SCAR, right? That's at least like dorky, but kind of like, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, make it cool.
SCAR. Oh, God, get the fuck out.
The debate concerned Haywood's promotion of a strategy he calls no enemies to the right, which urges people on the right to avoid any public criticism of others in their camp, including extremists. Early in the Rufo hosted discussion last Tuesday, as in October, keep in mind, Haywood raised the hypothetical possibility early in the discussion. Let's say a real white nationalist arose who had real political power and therefore could be of assistance against the left. Responding to the hypothetical, Haywood said, I think that the answer is that you should cooperate with that person in order to destroy the power of the left. Later, Haywood responded to concerns about right-wing authoritarianism by saying, when we're talking about people like Franco or Pinochet or even Salazar, they did kill people. They killed people justly. They killed people unjustly. And that's just a historical fact. But they saved a lot more people than they killed.
Fuck you with a cactus.
Pinochet was military dictator of Chile from 1971 to 1990, and coming to power in a coup, he tortured, exiled, or killed tens of thousands of his regime's opponents. That's apparently an acceptable and even desirable outcome for some people there.
Because conservatives don't believe in democracy.
Franco was dictator of Spain from 36 to 75, and his regime killed 100 to 200,000 people during the so-called White Terror. Salazar was the head of Portugal's authoritarian one-party state from 32 to 68. His regime repressed domestic opposition and oversaw brutal colonial policies in Africa that permitted forced labor and other abuses. So, you know,
slavery. Yeah.
Cool names you guys are dropping over there, man. Jesus Christ.
Great. Yeah, those people are fine, right? Like, oh my God.
He credits speakers with raising some provocative points on all sides, some thoughtful points on all sides, and told listeners, I think there is a room for engaging the dissident right and the establishment right. I think we need to have a bridge between the two and engage in thoughtful dialogue. Yeah, because when you're dealing with fucking fascists, like extremists, like who are literally like, yo, let's fucking kill anybody that doesn't agree with me, you're going to get some real thoughtful fucking dialogue.
Right. Those are, historically thoughtful people.
The Guardian emailed Rufo and DeSantis detailed requests for comment prior to publication, but they didn't want to, and that's another fashy thing. It's like they're to the point now where they don't even give a fuck if somebody wants, like, hey, can you clarify what you mean? But no, we don't care what you do. It doesn't matter.
Well, and you know what? Here's the truth, right? When they don't feel the need to comment, it's because that's basically just Rufo and them saying to the Guardian, you already know what we mean.
Right. Well, but then, so, just to, maybe he decided that he needed to do some element of damage control. Rufo said in a statement after publication that to the Guardian, that he was against right-wing racialism and against an unrestricted policy of no enemies to the right.
But then if we can go back to this New Republic article that we have pulled up on my end.
Yeah.
Just
okay.
I have the wrong article up. We can go back to this one. Oh, but he is involved with eugenicist and a racialist. Huh. So he's lying. That's called lying.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably like it might be one of those things where he doesn't consider this guy a racialist.
Sure,
right?
Except that he's like a noted racialist.
Well, I mean, but like, the same way that chuds will, argue all day long about what is actually racism kind of
right.
thing. Like,
yeah, their definition of racism is, did you shoot a black guy today?
Were you calling him the N-word when you did it? Because
when you did it, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, but so you did call him, but did you wear a KKK hood? No,
right.
Didn't think so. So that's not racism.
That's not real race. Yeah, like.
And then during the debate, Rufo also criticized the U.S. white nationalist Richard Spencer, which is easy to do whenever he's just, by and large, he's not an entity that has any relevance anymore.
And also, like, because he's arguably America's most well-known open fascist.
Yeah.
It is easy to go, I don't support that guy. But, like, okay, so you're not as much of a Nazi as America's most famous Nazi. That's a low bar. I'm not impressed by that. I am less fascist than fucking Richard Spencer. Okay, congratulations.
Here's the unspoken thing I think about modern day fascism is that they will never, even once they attain power, I don't believe they will ever acknowledge that they are fascists. The only fascists that will or ever have, and they're gone now, are the original fascists. They call themselves fascists. They named themselves that. The Italian fascists and whatnot. And like, but now it's like, no, they're never going to just go, ha, we got you. We were fascists all along. They will deny it even as they're doing, they're burning fucking books in the streets and having people fucking executed in the back of, news stations and stuff like that. They will not fucking.
Well, you look at like, and this creates some issues for them. Like, in Australia last year, there was a turf rally, and the neo-Nazi, the Australian neo-Nazi showed up in support, and the turfs had to like they couldn't get their story straight as to like, oh, but they're really here in support of trans people, despite like flying flags to the contrary and stuff, and holding placards and stuff. So like, it fucks up their whole thing to this, the pretense when the actual like out Nazis come out.
Yep. Yeah, the ones. I do need to add on that. Fucking, what's his name? He loves children. Talk about children's genitals. What's his name?
Oh, noted child genital enthusiast Matt Walsh.
Right. Yeah, he has actually called himself. He's a self-described fascist. So that's one. But I think people probably think he was joking.
Yeah, he plays the I'm just being ironic, or that's just a joke because I keep getting called fascist by the left.
Yeah. And of course they get away with this by and large because a lot of people don't know what fascism is and isn't.
No.
It's been so many people I've seen that are like, they just think it means using violence politically. That they think that's what fascism is. And it's like, what? And that's how they've managed to convince people that Antifa are fascists, right? Because they're like, well, the only ones I saw hitting anybody were Antifa, so who's real fascists? They must be
the real fascists. Yeah, it is a failure on the part of our education system systemically, top to bottom. And the reason that is that if you were to teach the history of fascism and fascist thought, a foundational plank of that philosophy were American Jim Crow laws and American eugenics studies that was imported into Europe from the United States.
Yep.
And people don't want to talk about that because it's ugly and because we did fight the fascists. But that's because of a whole bunch of other things.
Right. Like if we really truly started addressing the history of systemic racism and how it affects things and how it began and all that stuff, like it's kind of like what the statues issue is symbolic of, and why they're so against that, because if we really started addressing those things, we would eventually kind of defeat fascism.
Right.
Like, and they know that. Because
and they do.
They can't let us they cannot, the reason that they're like, oh, they hate America, they want everybody to feel guilty, and even though nobody's actually trying to make anyone feel guilty,
no one does that.
Look, you'll probably find people on Twitter or something that are being assholes about it, whatever.
You will nitpick, right? You can always nitpick, but you are not going to find a political body with any reasonable amount of power.
You're not going to find any teachers in class that are like, okay, kids, so today I want you to feel really bad if you're white. I want you to apologize to the black kid next to you. That doesn't happen.
That doesn't happen. That's a myth.
Not what it's about. It's just an education. It's just, acknowledging that things in the past have happened the same way that history, is always taught.
Right.
But they're so fucking adamant and aggressively against that because of this, because that is the demise of any kind of neo-fascist movement. It would not say fascism would be defeated forever, but it would essentially, it's
another roadblock they'd have to work around, right? And that's why they target education and education institutions so heavily, is because they want to perpetuate the culture war to keep conversations off of those facts, right? They want it even more rare that this comes up. Which is why you have fucking schools in fucking Wisconsin that teach the states' rights theory of Civil War and that whole bullshit. And they're in fucking Wisconsin, a northern state. Because we gotta get our shows filling. To fucking own people.
I know. Yeah, it's just.
I know.
As Bo of the Fifth Column once said, something to the effect of statues are not history; it's mythology. Yeah,
Bingo!
I mean, aside from the fact that like the statues that are typically being discussed were not, they're not historical, landmarks in the sense that they were made then. They're not pieces of history from the moment that history happened. They're pieces of propaganda that were established for the purpose. Yep. Of letting black people know that, hey, we got you, remember when we owned you? Yeah. Apologize to Reggie for being white, then go pee in the litter box.
I wish I would have grabbed it for this, but it just is a complete non sequitur. But in one of these anti-trans bills in one state, they like carve out a section to like threaten to send animal control after furries. And it's just like, why are you people so weird? Why?
Their brains are cartoons, man. I swear to God. Like they're just like this weird addled cartoon of conspiracy and fucking bullshit just bouncing around in their skulls. So anyway, Heidi Byrick, an extremism expert who co-founded the Global Project on Hate and Extremism, called this discussion that Rufo had and its framing a disaster. By engaging true extremists, white supremacists, and authoritarians, Haywood's vision of no enemies to the right will sanction and empower those movements, which I think most people with any sense can tell is the effect of that kind of thing.
And I've been able to tell for years now. Like,
do you think Rufo doesn't understand the concept of fucking platforming? Of course he does.
Right, of course he does.
Probably better than we do, honestly.
Well, I would imagine.
She also wrote Conservative Cowardice on White Supremacy, and this is the truest shit we're going to say today. Conservative cowardice on white supremacy is the road to losing a democracy and possibly much worse in terms of hate-driven political violence and autocracy. And to that end, I would like to once again shout out Danimal, who I don't know if he still self-identifies as conservative or not. I know that at one point he was, and kind of more on that side than left or anything, and he still has his criticisms. We've talked about him about the left and certain things, but generally he draws the line here, and he recognizes fascism when it's fascism, and he recognizes that this cowardice and in some cases not even cowardice, knowingly and with a smile, being like, oh, well, I don't, nudge. We're just hearing them out,
well, and I think that when you're talking about everyday conservatives who like buy into what conservatives, this like independent, free from government, personal liberty conservatives, right? I think this is why the like don't punch right thing is such an important propaganda tool, because it prevents those conservatives from knowing who their elected representatives and their staff are in bed with, right? That if they're not criticizing racists, if they're not talking about racism, then those people are less likely to know all that's going on, who they're in bed with, who they're okay with, who those people are inspired by. And I think that is something that when your everyday conservative finds out, I mean, not all of them will have that come to Jesus moment, but some of them will, or some of them will stop voting Republican because it's just like, I'm now politically homeless because like I don't like Democrats, and fair enough. But also like my party is no longer my party. What the fuck do I do?
Right. Yeah. So back to let's see. Okay, here. Just to finish this out, because there's a couple of good statements from some anti-extremist watchdogs here.
Sure.
Hannah Gaius, a senior research analyst at the Southern Poverty Law Center's Intelligence Project, said there's sizable segments of the right, that want the best of both worlds, namely the energy and the vigor of the reactionary far right, but without any of the baggage. And that's just, you can see that.
Right.
You know, and like I said when we started talking about this, like this actually did help me kind of reframe there is a spectrum of conservative, I believe. And of course, you know, when we talk about this, it's not like I'm saying that some of them are actually okay or whatever. It's like, if you are a coward to the reactionary movement in side of your movement, or if you were just, you know, quietly in cool with it, you're a piece of shit too. But I mean, you know,
there are degrees of awfulness.
Honestly, I don't know which one of those is worse. I can't make a moral judgment on that. It's too difficult. Fair. Who's worse? I don't know. The open one or the one that's just, they're both fucking huge pieces of shit.
But I think we do have some conservative outlets that are actually starting to push back a little bit. And I'm going to pop up some and refresh these. And so this is Reason Magazine. It's a libertarian think tank. I think it is, if not funded, but like definitely has had Coke money before. And they have two pretty in-depth articles on how Chris Rufo is a scumbag. Here is basically when taking over the new college in Florida. He was not renewing contracts and firing professors for going after their left-wing views, but it might be a little bit illegal. And his attempt to remove the accepting environment and a more liberal environment in creating this conservative theocratic school, he might be breaking some laws. And now this is, unfortunately, our court system is a mess.
Right.
So who knows if and when this can be sorted out. But it is certainly an interesting read, and I liked this one a lot. Because I think if you want to be a centrist, right? If you genuinely believe in this, like the right answer is somewhere in the middle, right? He is everything he claims to hate, but flippy floppied. You know, he's talking about, you know, here we go. Chris Rufo wants you to be afraid. A sinister woke ideology promoted by a shadowy cabal is infiltrating America's treasured institutions. And it talks about his talent as a marketing guy, right? Tying all these things together as this, like taking a relegated liberal theory or radical law theory into this big moral panic that
is now just like a boogeyman. It's around.
Is now just a boogeyman, and he is involved with all these people and pushing these moral panics, and he's sort of become this thing he's claimed to fight. And it goes on and on and on about that. So,
well, I mean, that kind of, you know, two things that popped up just now in my mind is one that, for one thing, the woke ideology promoted by a shadowy cabal. How does that not just fit right in with what extremists on the right think?
Right.
Like, even if he doesn't think that way himself, he's providing a template that is filled in with the far right. You know, that's why the woke thing works for them as well as it does for the less extreme conservatives, because they can just go, oh, shadowy, you know, it's like somebody doing some sinister thing, and we don't know who it is, but they're doing it, and you know, we know who it is. They don't, you know, they won't admit it, but we know, kind of thing.
Right.
And then also, it's just like how chuds have become the thing that they were railing against.
Right.
You know, that like maybe existed on some level. There was definitely some cringe, you know, YouTubers and I definitely remember seeing some what you call it? What's the name of that website? The one that liberals and leftists used to be on a lot.
Tumblr.
I saw some fucking cringe Tumblrs back in the day of, like, you know,
there's cringe all over social media. It turns out when you have an infinite number of assholes, you're going to have infinitely stupid things.
And if you cultivate them and look for a certain thing, yeah, you're going to find some shit.
You're going to find someone.
But, you know, but that doesn't mean that it was the most prevalent thing. It really wasn't at all. And
no, yeah, but you're able to blow it up and.
But now look, what does exist now is a network of fucking far right and you know, conservative, fascist, even leaning you know, YouTubers who are pushing an agenda about their politics, and they're, you know, they're lying about what this media is really about, And they're, the same exact shit that they accused and still do accuse of.
I think to bring it back around, and there's a reason I pulled up this tab.
Sure.
To bring it back to Discovery Institute, because when you have someone who is just so actively a bald-faced propagandist and liar, you go, okay, so what does he really believe, right? What is the core of his beliefs?
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you look where he got his start, this is what he believes in. This is my hypothesis. That he believes in some version of Christian dominionism and has pushed all of these things towards that sort of goal. And you see that in his execution as a important person at New College, that he has executed on those goals of removing education from schools, which is what Discovery Institute is all about. That is their bread and butter. They don't want schools to teach things. They want schools to teach not things. And that's exactly what he wants to do with this school he's in charge of now.
It's America. Don't catch you slipping now. Don't catch you slipping now. Look what I'm whipping now.